Welcome to the first episode of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. I'm Josh,
Hi, and I'm Adam.
and we're here to talk Star Wars news, reviews, and our points of view. Was that grammatically correct, Adam?
Yeah, it sounded good to me. We're good to go.
So right now, I'm imagining your awesome sound piece that you came up with introing our show. I couldn't hear it right now, but I'm so excited to go back and listen to it because it was awesome.
Yeah, man. I hope it all flows together nicely. This is all. This is all going to be trial and error for a little bit, I think.
Yeah, this is my first time ever doing a podcast, so definitely going to be working some kinks out for sure. So I wanted to start with kind of our intros into Star Wars. I think that's a great place to start. So I'll ask you first. What got you into Star Wars in the first place?
I mean, it sounds so like cliche, and I think like everybody probably says something similar about it. But I've been watching Star Wars since I can remember. Like I can't even remember what age I was when I first started watching Star Wars. But I remember watching it. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
my dad going to a video store and picking up. It was Empire Strikes Back, and I remember him saying, this is the next one. Check this one out. That type of stuff.
Right.
But I really don't remember like what age that was. I don't remember anything about that. I just remember that I've been watching Star Wars, that far back, and
As long as you can remember.
pretty much, yeah. Um, and what I really do remember getting into is when I found out about things like books and comics, and that's those stories didn't stop uh, with the movies, and I didn't find that out until probably seventh or eighth grade at my high school
Mm-hmm.
library when I found a couple Star Wars novels sitting on a shelf. I'm like, what the heck is this? And you know that took me down a huge rabbit hole of what I found out was an expanded universe, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
reading novels and started to read comics, ever since that. So,
So it sounds like for you, it didn't end with Return of the Jedi.
no, and the weird thing was like that didn't even I didn't even find that out until the prequels were happening because the first book that I read was like uh, a young Obi-Wan, like a young adult type novel
Mm-hmm.
about a young Padawan Obi-Wan, um, from the prequels, and from there I found the Thrawn trilogy, and I started reading the New Jedi Order and all all the different things, and hasn't stopped then, and still reading new canon material and even Legends material today.
Definitely, definitely.
So
Yeah, I
yeah, what
think.
about you?
Well, I guess I similar beginnings, but a little bit different. My first memory is having the VHS tape at home of A New Hope at my grandma's house, and just watching that, and
Hmm.
just being kind of blown away by that. And I think I was about 10 years old, probably, which I think is just the prime age to start watching Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure.
George
Yep.
Lucas always talks about how it's a movie for with kids in mind, 10-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds,
Hmm.
that type of age.
Yeah.
Um, and from there, like I remember around that time, it must have been, around 1997, when the special editions were being re-released in the theaters. And
Okay.
so I remember going to see The Empire Strikes Back in the theater, and then like a few weeks later or something like that, they had Return of the Jedi too.
Hmm.
Um, so just seeing those on the big screen, like the first time I saw Empire, the first time I saw Return of the Jedi, it was on the big screen, and
That's awesome.
those, yeah, and so those became my two favorite Star Wars movies, and they still are. Um, and so
Yeah.
from there,
Yeah.
I go ahead. What were you
No,
gonna
no, no,
say?
no, no, no. I was just confirming your story.
Yes, yes. So at that point, unlike you, I thought the story kind of ended with Return of the Jedi. Um, and a couple years later, the prequels came out and everything. We had the
Hmm.
Phantom Menace, and
Sure.
I was in my teenage years when episodes 1, 2, and 3 came out and everything. Um, and of course, at the time, I loved them, and you know, and was really into the prequels and everything. And I kind of changed viewpoints on the prequels a couple times throughout my life, but
Hmm.
But I didn't really, get into the expanded universe or anything like that. I didn't know any of that stuff really
Sure.
existed. So for me, it was pretty limited to the films, and um, which I think brings us to maybe our two different perspectives on Star Wars, and
Yeah.
kind of the title of this podcast being from a certain point of view. So my thinking going into this was, from a certain point of view, is mentioned quite a bit in Star Wars by a few characters, and um, just thinking like how you and I both have different points of view on Star Wars, and I think everybody who's a Star Wars fan has their own point of view, and sometimes we can argue about those
Hmm.
points of view or have debates, but I think ultimately the idea is you want to kind of look at each person's point of view and find some middle ground and find some areas where you do agree and even where you disagree. So
Yeah, sure. And I've been I've been saving this up, but I think we need to talk about, and I know that this has been beat to death,
sure.
but I think that we do need to talk about um, The Last Jedi at some point
Hmm.
because I've been thinking a lot about
Definitely.
that, and I think we just need to have a little chat on it. I don't want to give away all my cards at this point, but I think for the zero people that listen to this, it's we'll
Well, if there is anybody listening, I think just a brief kind of talk about the Last Jedi, very brief, since we
hmm
could do a whole podcast on the Last Jedi.
yeah, and we will.
Um, the my from my point of view, I like the Last Jedi and I enjoy it very much.
Hmm.
After my initial reaction was negative towards it, but then on multiple viewings, I came to appreciate what it is, and I actually do love the movie. And Adam's kind of on a different end of the spectrum there.
I've been on a. I mean, I don't. It's been negative. I mean,
Hmm.
but like I said, I want to talk about that more.
Yeah.
Um, I've actually uh, not to get too far in. I mean, I've actually taken a little bit of a break from Star Wars for the last year or so.
Right.
Um, haven't been reading as much. I'm trying to get caught up on all that now. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, yeah. Let's circle back to this at some point in the future because uh, points of view, like we've talked about before, um, they can clash, and we've definitely seen that in the fandom as a whole lately.
Oh, for sure.
But points of view can also shift, and I think we need to talk about that too. So.
Yeah, and I think the quote for me that really inspired the title of this podcast is from Obi-Wan from Return of the Jedi when he tells Luke, he says, "You're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view."
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's such a true statement, and we can have completely different points of view that shape our own truths and our own viewpoints. And I think just if I can say one more thing really
Sure.
briefly about
Sure.
the Last Jedi, and I think even thinking about your love for the expanded universe,
Hmm.
I think what happens sometimes is, especially for lovers of the EU, I think you read the Thrawn trilogy and those novels, and seeing the characters of Luke, Han, and Leia, and going in a certain direction, and then um, so you're kind of, you've experienced that, and then so you have all these thoughts in your mind about how this sequel trilogy is going to go, how the Last Jedi in particular is going to go with the treatment of Luke Skywalker and his character, and so I think it disappointed a lot of people who kind of had these certain preconceived notions of how Luke was going to be, um,
Hmm.
and so I think a lot of people had that reaction um, to the Last Jedi, where I went into it not having read any of the EU or the Thrawn trilogy or anything like that.
Sure.
So I think that makes a difference, and I think
Yeah. Yeah. But and yeah.
yeah,
And that kind of Luke has always been my main sticking point on Last Jedi,
yeah,
but yeah, like I said, I've been doing some reading and some research, and we'll talk about that in more depth at some point. So.
definitely. So I think the main point is we have different points of view, and that's the idea behind this podcast, is to share those and embrace those and respect those different points of view. And I think toxic fandom can be created um, from not appreciating each other's point of view.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of the problems came in the Star Wars fandom. I think just, there's a difference between seeing something that you don't like and don't agree with, and then like boycotting or sending, hurtful or hateful things to creators of that content.
Hmm.
So I think there's a big difference there, and
Yeah.
I think the idea of our podcast is to try to kind of marry our 2 points of view. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so what our normal show is going to look like is we're going to have 3 major sections. We have news, reviews, and then points of view. So, the news is obviously just anything that's in the headlines for Star Wars for that week. Reviews, it could be, it could be a trailer reaction. It could be a review of an episode of The Mandalorian. It could be a review of The Rise of Skywalker. Any reviews that we have for that week. And then our points of view is just some other topic about Star Wars that we want to talk about and kind of give our point of view on. Does that sound about right, Adam?
Yeah, and just like any podcast, I think you just be aware that any of those at any given time in any week, one of those segments could take up a lot more time than another, or maybe one segment kind of has to take over the show. Like I'm thinking specifically of weeks when certain things like Rise of Skywalker might premiere, that we might
Yeah,
have to
absolutely.
spend a lot of time on a review for that. And
Absolutely. So it is subject to change.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's our kind of rhyming and takes the
Yeah,
name of the show into account and all that stuff, so you can count on news, reviews, and points of view.
definitely. I love it. So we're going to get ready to, and well, today, even the format today is going to be a little different from our general format as we're going to be talking about a couple trailers, The Rise of Skywalker and The
Hmm.
Mandalorian. But are you ready to cue the sound for our news
Yeah,
segment?
yeah. Let's get
All
right
right,
into the
Adam, go
news.
ahead and cue that.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
We're going to dive into the news for this week, and our main topic, our main headline is that Benioff and Weiss are out when it comes to their Star Wars trilogy or series of movies that they were set to make. And this news broke, was it Monday, Adam? Do you remember?
I believe so.
I think it
I'd
was
have, I'd
Monday,
have to
maybe.
I'd have to look
Um,
back. It was somewhere around there. Yeah.
so I typically go to StarWarsNewsNet.com for my Star Wars news. They're very reliable and definitely provide accurate information. I mean, they broke the Obi-Wan news like pretty early before it was officially announced. So they're really spot on with things. And so I'm looking at Star Wars News Net right now, and just kind of some quotes that I pulled when it comes to the Benioff and Weiss deal going south. So looking at kind of what they said, they are regrettably stepping away. There are only so many hours in the day,
Hmm.
and we felt we could not do justice to both Star Wars and our Netflix projects. And then Kathleen Kennedy went on to say that David and Dan are incredible storytellers. We hope to include them in the journey forward when they are able to step away from their busy schedule to focus on Star Wars.
Hmm.
So
Good PR speak on both parts, right?
yeah, yeah, I think there's definitely more to
Hmm.
the story than meets the eye here.
Yeah,
Um,
it sparked a huge conversation
yeah,
about the
for
whole thing.
sure, and
Yeah,
I
even
and I
just
think even
between you
more
and
things
I,
came out
right?
later in the week.
Hmm.
So,
Even
do you mind if I start with my initial reaction to this?
yeah, go for it. I mean, and then yeah, go for it. And then I'd like to talk about maybe some of the conflicting reports, because I think they really were kind of like maybe not totally conflicting, but there was definitely
Hmm.
at least two different perspectives on this whole thing. So yeah.
Yeah, hearing a lot of different things.
Hmm.
So my initial reaction to this was very disappointed, um, very sad about this, and for me, it's because I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Sure.
Game of Thrones is probably my favorite TV show of all time. I think it did things to the landscape of TV that just changed the way shows are made, and what you can do on television. And just the content that they do on Game of Thrones, just with the different houses, with the political intrigue behind it and everything, and just the type of storytelling they do. I was really excited to see that in Star Wars, with particularly like the Old Republic, and looking at maybe the origins or the war between the Sith and the Jedi, and just I had thoughts of seeing Kit Harington with like a lightsaber, just all these things that entered my mind that I was very excited about. So yeah, I was very disappointed. Now I know there was probably some people who were jumping for joy because maybe they didn't like season 8 and how things went in season 8 of Game of Thrones. I'm kind of on the other side of that, where there were a couple things that happened that I didn't agree with, but I saw how those characters came to make those decisions that a lot of people disagreed with. And I think it was just one of those things where I stepped back and was like, okay, that didn't go how I thought it would, but I can still appreciate what they did here, and the time, the energy, the blood, sweat, and tears they put. So I'm kind of on the other side of that reaction, where I was pretty disappointed by this news. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts on this, Adam?
My reaction's probably a little more flat, because like Game of Thrones just hasn't never really been my personal thing, so I didn't really have that attachment to it. But then my reaction when the news first broke was kind of like, okay, let's just wait and see, because like we really didn't even know what they were working on until some of these reports came out last week,
right,
about what they might have been working on, which, like you mentioned, was a Jedi origin story.
Right.
Now, had I known that, and known some of the ideas that they had a year ago, that would have given me some time to think about this and get excited for it. But being that we really didn't know anything about the project until it was already done, it was like for me, it was more like well, guess we're not getting that now type of thing. It's really,
right, gotcha. So
it wasn't really more of
hit you as hard as it hit me.
Sure, yeah, it wasn't really a disappointment to me as it was. It became an interesting discussion piece because of some of the larger implications for this. So the first thing is, maybe why this happened, right? So
because this seems to be a pattern that's happening with
it's happened
Star Wars
already about 4-ish times now.
You had Lord and Miller with Solo,
Lord and Miller, Colin Trevorrow
with Episode 9.
If you count Gareth Edwards in Rogue One, because he didn't actually come back for the reshoots for that.
Right, they brought Tony Gilroy in for that, yeah. And
now Benioff and Weiss.
Right.
So yeah, it's been happening a good bit. So the initial reasons that were given were they were too busy. All right.
Yeah.
Which
immediately, it's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. Immediately, I was like, okay, that's BS.
Yeah, and that I think what got people the most riled up is because that kind of happened with Game of Thrones too, where some of that was abbreviated because of their work beginning on Star Wars, right?
Right. So there's definitely some irony there, I think.
Yeah. So there's a narrative that's starting to pop up around Benioff and Weiss, that they're leaving, or I guess not leaving, but they're not giving their full attention to Game of Thrones because of Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah.
So they get to Star Wars and now they're leaving because they're too busy with other things. So I mean, it's there's a bit of a pattern popping up around them, but like you said, there's also a pattern popping up around Star Wars too. So, one of the articles that broke after this mainly kind of said that Benioff and Weiss were actually out after the finale of Game of Thrones, and we're just finding out about this now. Which that
was where my mind went originally. Which I thought this has everything to do with fan reactions to season 8, and it's bad PR for Star Wars, and they want to kind of stay away from that. That was where my mind went.
yeah, and I can see how that is, but it's also kind of weird that that didn't get out until now. You know, what that's what
Right.
6 months, 5.5 months,
Hmm.
something like that. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Uh, Before something like that would leak, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and then something else that popped up, which I actually think drives a little bit better with everything that's been going on around this, is that Kathleen Kennedy wasn't real jazzed with the Netflix deal, right?
Sure.
And I can see that being a main reason for their exit at this point. Like, they
Yeah, I mean, there's
signed.
definitely a larger thing going on between Netflix and Disney, where a lot
Sure.
of
Hmm.
Disney's content is being
Yes. Right.
pulled
So
from Netflix and everything else.
right. So for Kathleen Kennedy, from a corporate standpoint, being a Disney employee, more or less at this point, um, that that creates a sticking point, right? Because your main director for your next main trilogy in Disney's crown jewel of sci-fi is also going to be splitting time with a main competitor at this point, right?
Yeah, that would have been very difficult to make that work for sure.
Yeah, and then also, uh, their work on Netflix is basically starting now, so they're basically splitting their time. And Kathleen Kennedy, as a executive for Lucasfilm, I'm sure she doesn't like that idea either, because you'd like them to focus their time and attention on Star Wars, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I
yeah,
get it.
so I mean, and then there were some really weird stories that I saw break later in the week about how Lucasfilm is limiting creative control and all on all
Yeah,
this stuff. And to that I say, of course they are. Why
right. That
wouldn't they?
and that's where
like
my concern goes.
but for me, like, that's obvious, right?
Yeah, I think to an extent you have to protect the brand and be
Sure,
careful with it because of the canon and
sure.
because like you mentioned earlier in the week to me, the story group and just keeping everything tight with the story. And I get that. I think from my concern is um, very talented people wanting to stay away from Star Wars because of the lack of creative control, because of toxic fandom. I worry that
Hmm.
talented people are going to stay away from Star Wars, and we're not. At the end of the day, you have to trust the people that you hire. In my mind, to create and to kind of execute their vision. But I definitely understand being cautious with Star Wars and everything. I just don't want like the storytelling to be kind of dumbed down and commercialized in a way. It's hard for me to explain what I mean by that, but just like I kind of like deep stories that make you think and that challenge you. And
Hmm.
I want to see some of that in Star Wars still. So that's my concern.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that you'd lose that, because I think that, like, I think that what we've seen out of Star Wars in the last, what was it, it's 5 years now since the Disney buyout, but
Yeah.
I don't think that we've seen that limitation in Star Wars yet. And I don't
Yeah, I
think
would agree.
that,
I
yeah,
would agree.
and I yeah,
I mean, I
and
think
I
the
don't
most
think,
commercial sort of the movies is probably The Force Awakens, but I loved The Force Awakens. So,
sure, sure,
I
yeah,
think it was the most appealing to a larger audience.
yeah.
Um,
And we saw the Last Jedi take some risks, and whether or not they paid
hmm.
off is, a point of view thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think that we've seen that total limit in creativity, and I think that attention to story and continuity has been there since the beginning. And for me, I wonder if some directors that agree to step onto this think that they have more control than they actually do. And
Hmm.
when they get into the situation, they realize, okay, so I have creativity to do this, but I still have to do it around this story aspect. Like,
Right.
I think that might be limiting to some people, understandably. Um,
Hmm.
but also, from a Lucasfilm point of view, I have to understand that they need to keep this stuff straight, and they need to be able to do this stuff so that not only it exists within the confines of what's happening now, but it can also exist in the confines of what's happening 5 years from now in media that they plan to produce, right?
Yeah, and
I
speaking of,
don't think,
plan, I think they definitely need to have a good, solid plan going forward.
yeah, and two more main things for me on this. Like, first of all, I don't think that, and this is a little bit speculation on my part
Hmm.
from stuff that I've heard and read. I don't think that that type of story control existed back in the day of the expanded universe and things of that nature.
Right.
And because of that, that led to a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of issues
Which is probably why they
within the
had to
expanded
just kind
universe.
of call the EU Legends and recanonize everything for
Yeah,
that reason, I'm sure.
yeah, for that reason and for the reason, they want to tell their own stories, which I
Tell their
get.
own stories and create their own, yeah,
Sure, yeah.
thing.
Um, but yeah, I don't think that that level of story control existed back then, which led to a lot of issues. And
Yeah,
so
I think
that's
you're
why
absolutely right.
it has to exist now. And I don't know that some directors are comfortable with working around those limitations. Not to say that that happened here, but I could see that
Right.
being an issue, um, with some people on that.
Hmm.
And my second feeling on this is I don't know that Star Wars needs big name directors to step in. I think they need the right people to step in.
Yes, I absolutely agree 100% with you because I think the tendency from Kathleen Kennedy has been to go out and get the big name directors, the
Hmm.
hot hands, so to speak, of that are the big names, and be like,
Hmm.
oh, we want you, and we want you, and we want you, but without really vetting them, and making sure that the right director, for that story that they're telling.
Right.
So I think they need to do a better job of that.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So this leads me to the question of, Kevin Feige. Do you think, first of all, before I get into that, do you think this story is still going to happen? Do you think we're going to see the Jedi origins, the Sith origins, and Old Republic type of stuff? Do you think that's still going to happen?
So yeah, I don't know about the Jedi origins.
Right.
It sounds like,
Because that's before, Jedi origins would kind of be before
yeah,
the
you
Old
the
Republic time, I'm guessing.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I don't know how they would. I don't know how they would do that in a new canon situation. I guess that could be. I guess that could be open for discussion.
Sure.
But it seems like that would be a precursor to even Old Republic
Hmm.
stories. So whether or not that still happens, I don't know. Like it sounds like it's not happening,
Right.
but I could also see a situation where I think it's early enough in that cycle to still save that movie, for lack of a better word. I don't know if save
Hmm.
is the right
Yeah.
word. Uh, that's still 3 years out at this point. I would
Right.
say that
Yeah.
that's
So,
plenty of time to find somebody to direct that story in the next couple months, and
yeah, because
still get
I
it going.
think like Star Wars has mined the time period that we're in right now quite a bit. So, talking about like, especially the time around the original trilogy, and they're going to do
Yeah,
that
that.
even more on Disney Plus with,
Yeah.
um, with Obi-Wan, with Cassian,
Hmm.
with those series. So, really, if we think about it, we can either go back in the timeline or ahead in the timeline. So,
Or in between.
I want to see Old
Those.
Republic stuff. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, those
Um,
30 years in between Jedi and Force Awakens are still ripe for the
yeah,
pickings.
that's a good time period to mine as well.
And I think
I'd
maybe
love to see some
Mandalorian will
stuff.
start into that storytelling. I hope.
Yeah, for sure. So, do you think Kevin Feige is going to be doing what Benioff and Weiss were going to do, or do you think
I
he's
don't.
going forward in the timeline?
I
Post
don't know.
Episode 9. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if he's going forward or back. I don't know, but I don't think he's doing. I don't think he'll be taking over the Benioff and Weiss story. And
Okay, fair enough.
I don't
Now,
think
do you,
that his movie is going to be the one that hits in 2022 either. I think he's just got too
okay,
much right now. I mean, he's just taken over all of Marvel. Uh,
yeah,
not just the MCU anymore. He's
right now it's all of
overseeing,
Marvel.
yep, comics, TV, movies, everything. Not to mention Phase 4 is kicking off in the MCU. I
Hmm.
think he's just got too much right now, and I don't think that him stepping in to do that movie in 2022 is going to happen. I think that's a little farther down the line.
Yeah, you're probably right. So
Um,
hopefully we're still going to get a Star Wars movie
I
in
think that we're
2022.
yeah, and I still think
Um,
that we're getting an Old Republic movie too. Maybe not the Jedi Origins, but I still think that the Old Republic's happening. It was interesting because it sounds like uh, the Old Republic, which we thought Benioff and Weiss were doing Old Republic. Everyone kind of was leaning that way. It almost sounds like
yeah,
those are two different projects at this point, and I'm not sure if that's misinterpretation or if that's actually real. But it almost sounds like
yeah, they
it almost
could be
sounds
two
like
different
the
things.
Old Republic and the Jedi Origins were separate projects, and it sounds like the Old Republic is still on the table. So
Yeah, good. I definitely hope to see that. So,
yeah,
anything else on this story? Our main news topic of the week.
uh, not that I know of. No.
Okay. Um, so yeah, we'll see what the future holds for Star Wars, and I just hope again we get a good solid plan of moving forward, and yeah, I mean Star Wars is not Marvel, and it can't be treated the same way, but I think we definitely want to
Right.
see a good plan going forward, and just some connectivity, between the
Yeah.
movies and everything. So,
Yeah.
um, are you ready to break down the Rise of Skywalker trailer with me?
All right. Let's get into reviews.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
Okay, awesome. So moving on to our next section, which is the kind of reviews and looking at the Rise of Skywalker trailer, the Mandalorian trailer. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to you in great detail about the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I watched it live during Monday Night Football, and then I watched it a few more times on YouTube after that,
Mm-hmm.
and I love this trailer. I don't know what your initial reaction was to it. It got me very excited. I kind of loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Very excited. Uh,
Yeah.
for me, this is kind of like I always viewed this as a movie that had to get me back into Star Wars, and I don't know if that's true or not anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah, this for me, and I think for a lot of people, it kind of is also. Uh, but the but yeah, the tone of this trailer, some of the scenes and some of the little details, they're definitely intriguing. It's just a lot of people are talking. It seems like there's a lot of excitement around it. So I think that the trailer was perfect. I think it did everything it had to do.
Me too.
Uh,
And I trust JJ. He started. I
hmm
love that he gets to finish this trilogy. He started
Yeah,
it. He gets to finish what he started.
yeah,
Kind of taking the words from Kylo Ren.
hmm
And I think he is very aware of the split in the fandom and wanting to kind of make a satisfying conclusion and tie a lot of things together, answer a lot of questions, kind of bring the fandom back to a more united front. Um,
yeah.
and so I guess that leads me into my first question, which is how much are we going to see in this movie that's brand new, and how much are we going to see that's nostalgia or old things, and even just starting with the planet itself. So like the first shot, we have Rey kind of running through the jungle or forest type setting. Looks
hmm
like she might be training, and kind of drops this rebel helmet. And my first thought was this is Endor, but then the more I got to thinking, maybe it's an entirely different planet and a new planet. So
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on that?
I think it's Endor. I saw some. Uh, I saw some discussion that it could be even Yavin, which kind of makes sense. Some of the terrain, maybe looks a little more like Yavin.
Yeah,
but yeah, I kind of lean towards Endor, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I could definitely see it being Endor, and they go
Hmm.
back there. It was obviously significant place where the rebels got their victory in Return of the Jedi. But I could see it being a completely entirely different planet too. So I don't want to like kind of set my mind on one thing. I think one thing that
Yeah.
JJ's done is with his mystery box that he tends to create, um, is just I think everything that happens that we've seen so far from the footage could go one way or it could go a different way. It could be a number of possibilities.
Right.
So I definitely want to keep my mind open to those possibilities.
Yeah, so I kind of lean towards Endor just because of, there's the wreckage and all that stuff, and then you also see wreckage of the throne room and stuff like that, and that calls back to, or, Return of the Jedi.
For sure.
Uh,
Definitely.
so I could kind of maybe seeing almost, I could actually maybe see that some of the story takes place around some of the different moons of Endor or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I would I
Some
would
of that,
I would like to see
right,
that. And
some of that second Death Star debris kind of spreading around to some of those moons.
yeah, I could definitely see that. So a little bit after we see this kind of Ray running through here, we hear Finn's voice, and he talks about, and I don't have the exact quote, but him talking about them having a connection. It's a feeling. He feels like the Force brought
Hmm.
them together. I mean, I'm assuming he's talking about he and Ray, but I'm not sure. But it just begs the question for me: do you think Finn is Force sensitive, or do you think that it's just kind of a feeling of kind of fate or destiny?
I just think it's
Um,
a fate or destiny feeling. Yeah,
yeah, um,
Finn
yeah, it's one of those
for
things I
me.
was wondering about.
Yeah, Finn for me has always been that Han Solo type, and we kind of talked about that a little bit before about Han being force sensitive. But I think it's kind of the
Right.
same type of character. And gets lucky sometimes, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's any more of a force sensitive situation than just kind of talking about fate and things like that. So
And just kind of them coming together for a purpose. And
yeah,
yeah, I tend to agree
yeah,
with you on that. I mean, if we found out that Finn was force sensitive, I'd be absolutely okay with it. But I think I kind of lean towards your thoughts on that one.
yeah.
So the next shot that I kind of had a question about is we see Ray
Hmm.
jumping from like one location to another,
Hmm.
um, and she kind of takes this leap from the forest atmosphere onto like what might be the inside of the remains of the Death Star wreckage.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so my question about this is this just a really cool transition shot, or is she like traveling through the force? Because I heard some possible rumors about like um, I don't know if it was called like force flash fights or something like that, where Ray and Kylo Ren were kind of connected through the force and
Hmm.
could touch each other's hands in the Last Jedi, even in different locations. So do you think this is just a cool transition shot, or like she's actually like able to go from one location to another through the force?
Hmm. I think it's transition shots.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I think that would be, pun intended, a big leap to take, and I think
Hmm.
I'd rather it be just a cool transition shot, and I don't know how I feel about kind of that force ability, I guess.
Yeah, I think that maybe. I'm kind of with you. I think that might be a step too far.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
would I would tend to agree.
so yeah, I would hope it's just a transition.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
Um, my next question that came up is in the trailer we see the Death Star wreckage. We see Rey kind of facing down Kylo Ren, and I guess my next question is where is the Death Star wreckage? But I think this question was actually answered and confirmed, and I don't know if you saw that or not. That they confirmed the planet that the Death Star wreckage is on, or the moon rather. Did you hear this?
I don't think so, but if you say it, it might ring a bell.
Okay, so apparently, it is a kind of an ocean moon called Kef
Oh,
Bur.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I did see that. Yep.
So
Ruined my Camino theory, but that's okay.
Yes, it did. It ruined it threw your Camino theory right out the window, and it also kind of ruined my sort of like, okay, I thought this wreckage was on Endor, but like you said, maybe
Yeah.
it's a moon of Endor. It's in the close proximity, and that could be what it is.
Yeah. I mean, how cool would it have been to go back to Camino though, right?
It would have been cool,
The whole
and I mean,
the whole
especially if
clone
you
theory
bring in
and
cloning and stuff.
the Empire. The Empire destroyed the Kaminoans to hide all the, to stop hide their cloning history, that type of stuff. Think about that. Would have been cool, right?
That would have been cool.
Yeah, I still want it.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And I think we'll talk a little bit about cloning here in a little bit in one of my questions. But I guess I love the line that Ray says that no one knows me. Everybody's telling me, they know who I am. I'm paraphrasing. But no one really knows me. And then, Kylo Ren steps up and he says, "But I do." So I love that. I love the whole storyline behind Rey's identity. I think this movie in a lot of ways is going to be Rey's identity.
Yeah.
And who is Rey? Are we going to learn more about who she really is and what her identity is? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I've been saying since The Last Jedi that I don't think that explanation was totally accurate, and so yeah, I definitely think that her origins and possibly family history are even more in depth, are explored even more in depth than they have been already. So
yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely more to her story and her identity, and I think a lot of it's going to be about her kind of figuring out who she is, and we're going to get those answers. Another shot that really stood out to me in this trailer is the kind of the Emperor. What I'm assuming is the Emperor's throne. And what was interesting about that you pointed out to me was it was actually a Ralph McQuarrie illustration that he came up with for the original trilogy, which is awesome.
Right. Yep. I love that fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think J.J. Abrams has done that with Force Awakens as well.
He's done that before. I love that he does that.
Yeah, me too. I just love incorporating those original illustrations into the art for the sequel trilogy. So
yeah,
I just love the look of that.
Yeah, since we kind of talk about Disney here, there's this old saying in Disney Imagineering, which is their kind of engineering department that comes up with a lot of the rides and technology stuff that they use in parks and things like that. And there's a saying that no good idea ever dies, right?
Yeah.
And I see that sometimes in this stuff, using old art to bring that back to use it in fresh ways.
Absolutely.
When it fits, because maybe it didn't fit back then.
Right, but now it does.
But now it does. So yeah, I love
That's
that.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they did that too with like Vader's castle on Mustafar and Rogue One.
Yeah, right.
Which was an original from Ralph McQuarrie as well. So I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I figured you would appreciate it as well.
Yep.
So the next thing we hear is Palpatine saying, "Long have I waited, and now your coming together is your undoing." So I love that line, and again, I'm assuming it means Rey and Kylo Ren coming together, Rey and Ben Solo, however you want to look at it. So how does Palpatine come back? I think that begs this question.
It's a big question, right?
Has he created clones of himself, like kind of in what storyline was that in Legends, or was it like a Dark Empire type of thing or something like that?
Yeah.
Where he has clones of himself, or in some contingency, and I think we saw a lot of hints to his contingency in like the Aftermath trilogy and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's one possibility. It could be that his spirit kind of latched on to something, kind of like a Voldemort type situation, maybe.
To be honest,
that's how he comes back.
That's If I were to guess, I think that's the one that I'd latch on to.
Okay, so you're going with that. I think I'm going with that too, and I think especially because in a later scene we see Rey and Kylo Ren and sort of destroying what might be the Vader's helmet or the shrine to Vader, possibly. So, or his helmet, and my question is, okay, did did Palpatine's spirit like latch onto Vader's helmet or something like that? So that's kind of where my mind goes, but I have no idea. But that was just kind of a wild thought I had.
Yeah. I tend to think that, especially when you look at the end of Return of the Jedi, where where Palpatine dies and is thrown off the cliff,
Yeah.
and you have all those weird blue.
Yeah.
I can see something like that being explained as that's how Palpatine's spirit escaped all that.
Right.
You can see all these little blue wispy things coming out of the.
Yes. So is that like his
Which
essence or his spirit, the dark side spirit that's latching on?
Right. Which isn't like, because there's the whole electricity thing happening, and those things don't look like electricity. They're more spirity, like wispy, cloudy things, and I could see an explanation that's something in there is his spirit, and it's it's escaping.
Yeah, and
through that method.
maybe like maybe they inadvertently bring him back or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anything else about Palpatine that you want to talk about and how he comes back, or is that you pretty good on that?
I'm guessing you're talking about that weird walking thing later.
Yeah, and it sort of looks like almost towards the end of the trailer, like
Right.
he's kind of moving slowly towards Rey, and she looks pretty terrified. Which, of course, the Emperor's a pretty scary dude. So.
And he's also like incredibly taller than her in that shot.
Yeah.
Or at least it appears that way. I don't know if that's
right.
Intentional.
So I'm wondering if he's like if he's like sort of in a pretty weak physical state and unable to kind of maybe move on his own or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
The next scene that really stood out to me was this new character of Babu Frick. I think that might be how you say it.
Yep.
Working on C-3PO and just 3PO's line of looking at his friends one last time. That's when I started to get really emotional watching this trailer.
Sure.
That's when I started getting some tears.
Yeah.
And just being honest, and I think it seems like he's being reprogrammed, or somehow he's going to lose his memories and not be the same 3PO for some purpose. So
let's just get this out of the way. He doesn't die. All right.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to die. He's
not
dying.
Blown to bits because there is no way that would have been revealed in the trailer.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So let's just get that out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not dying, but he might be a different kind of version or something like that, reprogrammed.
For sure. And earlier trailers with him with the red eyes, I think that all is connected to that part of it.
Yeah, and I love how 3PO seems to have a really significant role in this movie. I think he's really serving a purpose, and protocol droids interpret things, and that's their main function. So I think him having to decipher or interpret something, I think that'll be pretty neat to see. So
yeah, for sure.
Now, if I had a favorite shot in this trailer, it would have to be Kylo and Rey facing each other in the throne room.
Okay.
I just love this shot. I think that's a great use of nostalgia, just looking at the throne room from the Death Star remains, and you see the Emperor's kind of seat in there and everything. I just love that shot.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite shot from the trailer that you kind of took away from it?
Yeah, that iceberg.
Oh yeah,
type looking thing. Love that shot. That's the kind of scenery that I've been dying for in Star Wars. Throughout the last 5 years, and haven't
just seeing
really
something different.
Yeah, I'm a little tired of desert planets. A little tired of
desert, snow,
ice,
forest. We've kind of been limited to that stuff.
Ice, snow, salt, whatever you want to call it. It all looks the same. I'm tired of that type of scenery, and
right.
I love that shot. That's what I've been waiting for. So
yeah, I'm with you, and I'm wondering if that's kind of where
what you want about
where the Emperor's hiding out, basically.
Yeah, say what you want about the prequels, but the different ecosystems on different planets that you saw in those movies were.
Oh yeah, they really expanded the Star Wars universe.
I'm really happy to see something like that again.
I'm with you. couple of more things I want to talk about before we end our talk here on the trailer is just kind of the dagger that we see in Rey's hand if you look closely,
Mm-hmm.
and what that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's just curious to see Rey with a dagger,
Right.
and I don't know what that means, and what that is about. But did you have any thoughts on that?
Um, Initially, no. And I don't want to get too far into this, but I did read some things, and I probably
So
shouldn't
it
have
might be a
read.
little spoilery.
Yeah, so I don't know if I want to dive
Okay,
into what
so
I think that means, because
yeah,
I think that I might know what that means, but I don't want to.
okay,
I don't want to get into that. But yeah, it's an
fair enough.
interesting. It's an interesting thing, and it has to have some major story implications because there's no other reason for her to have a dagger. Okay, right?
Yeah,
So we'll just say that.
right. Definitely. Yeah, so we'll avoid that for right now since there are some leaks out there that we want to try to avoid and everything, so that
Hmm.
we don't have things spoiled for us
And
and
whether or
for
not, like,
our audience if anybody's listening.
yeah, right, yeah.
So the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this trailer is the end. We see Rey, and we see her looking at somebody or something, and we hear Luke say, "The Force will be with you," and Leia then ends the quote by
Leia
saying,
says it.
"Always."
Leia says it.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love Leia saying that, and I think that's perfect.
Hmm.
And I just love the idea. And I don't know if this is what's happening here, but I love the idea of Rey kind of being visited by Force ghosts, whether it's Luke, Leia, whether if Leia has passed on at this point to the Force.
I think it might be both. Yeah.
It could be both. It could be, and there could be other Force ghosts that show up in this movie. Maybe
Yeah,
Yoda,
right, right.
Obi-Wan, Anakin. Who knows?
Hmm.
But I just love
We
this
need to
idea
have
of
a theory episode before Skywalker drops because, like,
yes.
I
Let's do
ha-
that.
I've been reading and I have some interesting ideas, and we need to have a full show about that here. So
We'll deep dive into speculation and
yep.
theories. We'll try to speculate responsibly, but we'll do some theorizing. I
Nah,
like
heck
it.
with that. Heck with that. We're just gonna go all out.
We're gonna go wild with it.
I'm gonna go all out. I don't care
All
if you
right,
do it or not, but I'm gonna.
I'm ready for it. So yeah, I mean, the end of that trailer was again really emotional for me, and thinking about Carrie,
Hmm.
and her passing away, but kind of the line from The Last Jedi that I love is "No one's ever really gone," that Luke says to Leia, and it gets me every single time.
Hmm.
And just this idea of these kind of legends living on through the Force, and I think we have to see some Force ghosts, and it reminds me of the end of Deathly Hollows Part 2,
Okay.
where Harry is kind of visited by all the people in his
Hmm.
life that
Sure.
have sacrificed themselves for him or passed away, and they kind of
Hmm.
give him some extra needed courage to face Voldemort.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that here. So that was my thought on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else on the trailer?
No, not for me. Covered it
Okay.
pretty good.
Well, I loved it. I'm so excited to see episode 9.
Hmm.
It can't come soon enough, and this trailer just kind of cemented that for me. I'm sure we're getting pretty low on time here. So I don't know if we want to dive really deep on the Mandalorian trailer, but did you want to give just kind of
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, it's
a
another
little
great.
reaction to it?
Yeah, definitely. It's another
Yeah.
great trailer. I love the
Mhm.
tone that's being conveyed already. I mean, it looks like the budget in this is like it's movie level production on this
Yeah,
stuff.
I want to say it was about 10 million or so per episode. I think the
It's
total budget
something
was
like
around
that.
100 million, so
It's
that's significant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it looks amazing. I'm very excited for the 12th. We're recording this on the 2nd, so this is T
Yeah, we're
minus
like 10
10
days
days
out.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
unreal.
yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, like, initially when I heard of The Mandalorian, I was like, I don't know much about Mandalorians. I haven't watched a whole lot of Clone Wars. I mean,
Okay.
and I can't
Okay.
wait to go back through that. So I don't know a ton about Mandalorians. I wasn't overexcited about it.
Yeah.
But seeing more and more gets me more and more excited. And just hearing Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni talk about their process in creating this show is what gets me really excited because and I sent you that link
Yeah.
to the press conference they did, and Favreau really talks about just like his approach to it was, okay, I want to appeal to those fans that have put their time and effort into being a Star Wars fan, their time into canon, reading and consuming all that media and pulling stuff from there and just kind of pulling it all together. So I want to kind of create a show for those fans, but then also for the general fan who's coming at it with no knowledge, and just being a new fan. So
Right.
And that made me very excited. I also love to see in this trailer just some of the callbacks to like prequel era stuff, like this, like
Oh
the
yeah, for sure.
super battle droid in the background, and one of the creatures that he tangles with kind of reminds me of the creature from Attack of the Clones when they were on Geonosis.
Mhm. They
So
reused
stuff like that.
they reused one of the Clone Wars ships that were on Kashyyyk.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I saw that too.
Mhm.
So I think this is really going to be a show for the fans. I think it's going to be a love letter to fans, and you know, this trailer got me excited. I think this trailer really expands upon the trailer that came before it. I think we see a little bit more of everything that they kind of teased in the first one.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to watch it together and then break it down the day after.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Very excited.
all right. Anything else for this first episode of From a Certain Point of View?
I think we can wrap it up here, right?
Right. So I loved our chat today. I look forward to doing this on a weekly basis and just having someone to talk Star Wars with. And I've really enjoyed this, sir.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you guys out there if you're listening, and I hope you stick with us. And
this is going viral tonight. I know that.
Going viral.
Yeah.
So do we end this with a tagline? May the Force be with you, something like that. How do we end this up?
That's a
How
great
question. How about I say
That's
the Force will be with you, and you say always? Can we do like a Luke and Leia type of thing?
I'm not going to be your Layla. Your Leia.
Please be my Leia.
All right.
Will you do it for me?
I'll do it for you this week. Yeah.
All right. The Force will be with you.
Always.
The Force will be with you. Always.